You know that feeling when you see a brilliant idea, a really promising startup, and it just falls apart as it starts to grow? It happens all the time, but it doesn't have to. Today we're going to dig into a blueprint designed to prevent that exact collapse, the GoldenTrio Framework.
I mean, it's the absolute nightmare for any founder, right? You pour your heart and soul into a project, it finally gets some real momentum, and then you start seeing the cracks. Communication gets messy, the original goals get blurry, and the whole thing just feels like it's about to fly apart. So why is scaling so often a recipe for disaster?
Well, it almost always comes down to this one single word: misalignment. As a system gets bigger, the very things that made it work at the beginning, the people, the tech, the core mission, they all start pulling in different directions. Just think about any venture today. It's this incredibly complex dance between people, the technology, and the values that are supposed to guide everything. When you start to scale, it's like throwing more and more dancers onto the floor without any choreography. That misalignment, it's not just a minor hiccup. It's what leads to fragile, unfair systems that are pretty much doomed to fail.
And this, right here, is exactly where the GoldenTrio Framework steps in. Now, it's not some rigid set of instructions you have to follow perfectly. Think of it more like a compass for anyone building something. It's a lens that helps you make coherent, smart decisions, even as your creation gets more and more complex.
So where did this idea come from? Let's jump back to its origins in 2024 and take a look at the simple but really powerful concept that started it all.
The very first version was honestly beautiful in its simplicity. The idea was that any healthy system is basically a constant balancing act between three core forces: the people it's built for, the tech that makes it all work, and the values that guide it. If you can get that balance right from day one, you're building on rock-solid ground.
But why three? Well, think about it. A two-legged stool, totally unstable. A four-legged one can still wobble if the ground isn't perfectly flat, but a three-legged stool, it's always stable. The framework's creators realized that 3 was the magic number to create this dynamic, yet stable balance. It's just enough to create some healthy tension, but simple enough that you can actually manage it.
Okay, now this is where the framework gets really smart. Most of us, when we see conflict or tension in a system, we think of it as a bug, something to be fixed and eliminated. The GoldenTrio completely flips that on its head. It says tension isn't the problem, it's actually an incredibly powerful design tool.
And this tensions map is how they put that idea into practice. It shows you that conflict is really just a signal, pointing you to an area that needs your attention. Take that first example. Your stakeholders, in this case farmers, want transparent pricing. But your core system, your app, only shows bundled data. That tension? It's not a failure. It's a giant flashing neon sign telling you exactly what feature to build next.
And that leads to this key insight. Use tension not to simplify the system, but to refine its coherence. In other words, don't run from the friction. Use that friction to polish the whole system, to make it stronger and to make it more true to what it's supposed to be.
So this idea of using tension as a tool was a game changer, but it was still a pretty flexible concept. So next, let's look at how it got forged into something way more concrete, a universal matrix you could use to build just about anything.
Over the next couple of years, the framework got put through its paces. It was tested, it was refined, and it was hardened. It went from being this flexible model to a really robust, formal structure. It became a tool that wasn't just for one kind of project, but for everything. You know, one of the most important steps in that whole evolution was just getting the language right. Those early kind of vague terms got sharpened into precise, universal categories. And this was absolutely key to making the framework a tool that anyone in any industry could just pick up and start using. So first, they defined the who. The idea is, in any system, you always have these 3 roles. Let's take a marketplace. You've got the producers, the people selling stuff. You've got the consumers, the people buying stuff. And then you've got the enablers. That's the platform itself, or maybe the investors, or even the regulators. Every single system has this trio. Okay, next up they defined the what. These are the essential things any system needs to actually work. It really just boils down to 3 kinds of access. Access to markets, so you can find customers, access to capital, so you can fund the whole operation, and access to information, so you can make smart decisions. Without these 3 pillars, nothing gets off the ground.
And finally, they defined the how. These are the core principles that make sure a system is actually sustainable and fair. And look, these aren't just empty buzzwords. This is the bedrock of trust. Without things like inclusive growth, real accountability, and synergy, a system might do well for a little while, but eventually it's going to alienate its users and just crumble.
So you take the who, the what, and the how, you put them all together, and bam, you get the 3x3x3 matrix. It looks like a simple grid, but it holds some incredible power. It acts as both a blueprint when you're starting out and a diagnostic tool for fixing things when they go wrong. All right, so after all that theory, what's the real takeaway here? If you're out there trying to build something that lasts, why should you care about this framework?
The real power of the Golden Trio is that it gives everyone a shared language. And that simple language brings clarity to chaos. It lets different teams and even different companies work together smoothly. And it bakes your ethics right into the architecture from the start. It gives you a way to innovate and grow without everything falling apart. It's a toolkit for building systems that don't just get bigger, they get better.
At the end of the day, the Golden Trio Framework just gives you a clear path to align your people, your tech, and your principles right from day one. It's a way to build with true intention. So the final question really is for you. If you had this blueprint in your hands, what would you build?